Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for another awesome episode of the Freight 360 podcast. We got a special one today. We're going to introduce our guest here in just a second. But first, if you're brand new here, welcome to the Freight 360 podcast. Glad you found us. Make sure to check out all of the other content. There's another 184, if I did the math right, other episodes out there in our library. Go to the freight360.net website. There's an entire searchable database of all the episodes, our videos, blogs, and everything else out there. Keep leaving us your reviews and sharing us with your friends. We love growing, and our audience has grown leaps and bounds. So we appreciate all that. This episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Blue Book is the resource you need if you're transporting fresh produce. Their online database contains thousands of companies throughout the produce industry supply chain. You can easily search their database to generate new sales leads. Blue Book's credit ratings help you avoid companies with high credit risk, and their team can help resolve disputed loads. To learn more, go to producebluebook.com and click Join Today. That's producebluebook.com. All right, good episode. Ben, how are you doing today, man, before we get into it?
Doing well. I'm reading through that article you were just talking about, and I'm kind of really confused that it looks like that actually has existed for a very long time. Anyway, not to go off on a tangent just to start the episode off, but
we'll talk that in a second. I want to introduce our guest, Mr. Desmond Clark. Desmond, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you on.
Man, it's good to be on here, and I know we're going to get into it a little bit later, but this is like the start of my career, and now I'm on the show. So talk a little bit more about that later, but it's good to be on with you guys.
Yeah, we like it. We appreciate it. Well, I definitely wanted to bring you in for a little sports and news section here before we get into the episode based on your history in professional sports, and we'll get to that in a bit here. But I got to apologize to anyone listening if you hear my nasaliness today. That's not me being from Western New York. That's me getting over a cold. So we often get confused here in Buffalo. People say we sound nasally like we're Canadian, but it's actually a cold. But it is what it is. All right, on the let's talk news first. So Ben, you kind of alluded to it. You were talking. There was an FMCSA letter written to the TIA recently that TIA has had all these requests about there's all these outdated rules and whatnot, and they got a response back from the Department of Transportation, basically telling them, here's our decision. And the one that you were alluding to was the broker to carrier transparency. And it's a rule that has been around for like 40 something years, where basically brokers are legally required to disclose our rates by, if there's a written request by a carrier.
So the Code of Federal Regulations. It is, I guess, subsection 371.3, records to be kept by brokers. A broker shall keep a record of each transaction. For purposes of this section, brokers may keep master lists of consignees and the address and registration number of the carrier rather than repeating this information for each transaction. Then it shows, and then it's just the stuff that's on it. Consignee name, address, bill of lading number, the amount of compensation received by the broker for the brokerage services performed. And then the one that really, I guess, matters a lot is C. Each party to a brokered transaction has the right to review the record of the transaction required to be kept by these rules. And at the bottom, it shows the date of October 17th, 1980.
Yeah.
So, this has clearly been around. But here's the first question, though, that I had even looking at that article was I clicked the original and I'm like, how has that existed for literally a year before I was born? And I have never in one instance ever heard of or seen.
That's been like the hot debate the last year.
But,
carriers are all
in principle,
they're screwing us. Yeah.
But in practice, do you know of anybody or how this has ever, I've never heard of them ever being disclosed. It would just hurt the entire market.
No, I've never seen it in practice. And when I went to the TIA meeting in DC last September, we brought this up to all the legislators and basically said, this is outdated legislation. It's like if you went to the Apple store and demanded to know what Apple paid to build your iPhone. It's like, no, we live in a capitalistic country where there's free market and we can buy and sell services at the price that the market agrees to.
Bears.
So disclosing those rates is, I feel like, as outdated. It's overreach. I know there used to be, right? Transportation was very regulated back until the early 80s, where a specific lane had a set price that was set by the government. It was not a free market like it is now with brokers and carriers.
So that was when they deregulated. This is right before the deregulation, which kind of makes sense.
Deregulation, but that rule existed like two years prior to it. But anyway, basically, TIA got a letter back from the Fed saying like, "Thanks for your inquiry and suggestion, but no, thanks but no thanks. We're not changing it," type thing. So who knows? That was interesting to see that come out. But that's
apparently And again, I don't know this well enough, but I'm going to be curious to dig into this in the future. But it even says in there, to evade regulation, some brokers have resorted to requiring carriers as parties to broker transactions to waive their rights to obtain documentation that show the amount the shipper is paying the broker, FMCSA stated. So I would bet that in a lot of agreements with carriers, they waive the right in order to do business with the brokerage. So that's how they somehow subvert that regulation.
Who knows? But
they're saying that OIDA and the other organization that's backing this is saying they want to strengthen that so that they can't be subverted. So basically, the regulation has been around forever, but clearly there's some clause that is preventing brokers from having to do this, probably in their agreements to carriers. But OIDA and SBTC are trying to push to make this, I guess, more so that like the carriers. But the problem with that is then the shippers, that's their proprietary information, how they negotiate the rates, what they pay. And who's going to that's super proprietary. And some of them are public and private, and they don't want that disclosed. So even if you take the brokers and the carriers out of it, there's a big issue on just disclosing this information.
I think at the end of the day, the reason that the carriers want this information to be open is so they know if they're getting a fair rate or if a broker's making a ton of money on them. But I think where the caveat is to that is think about how many times we have to take a loss on a load to keep a customer happy, and the carrier doesn't know that. They're still getting paid their fair rate, and we're the one taking the hit. So I don't know. I'm just not a fan of that whole idea of making it all transparent. But we'll see what happens. There's we got a whole plenty of time ahead of us for back and forth, and TIA does a good job lobbying on our behalf around throughout the entire year, being located right in the DC area. So we'll see. Let's talk some sports here. Final Four coming up. Desmond, did you do a bracket this year or 10 of them?
I didn't, and I'm glad that I didn't because it would have been blown up after day one. You got 16 seed losing to 1 seed. I think we also had a 15-2, right? Did we have that?
Yeah, Princeton, Arizona in the first round was a 15-2.
Yeah, and then Purdue going down also a 1 seed. Yeah, if anybody still had a perfect bracket after the first day, it had to be luck. They were flipping coins to see which team they were going to pick.
I did not do a bracket this year, and I'm for the same reason as you. I'm glad I didn't because it would have been blown up. But so we're down to the the final four here. We got San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, Miami, and UConn. What are we predicting
what everybody
here?
Thought. That's just what everybody thought.
My two local schools. FAU's 3 blocks away from my house. Miami's only a handful of miles down the road. It blew my mind that they made it to the Final Four. I remember we were watching it all kind of down here. That is just, I was astounded they made it to the Sweet 16, let alone the Elite Eight, let alone the Final Four, right?
Where is the finals this year? Is it, why am I thinking, is it Houston?
Yeah, I think so.
H-Town.
At NRG Stadium.
Okay. Gotcha. Those are, they're fun games to go to. I went to one of the regional rounds in Buffalo 5 or 6 years ago and just caught a couple random games. It's pretty fun. But I've never been a huge college basketball fan, but I feel like everybody is in March. So good stuff. Who are you picking? Ben, who do you have? And Desmond, who do you think is going to take it?
I hope that one of the Florida teams makes it to the finals. I'd be happy to see either Miami or FAU. I'd really like to see FAU. I don't think they will because I think who they're playing next. Aren't they? They're playing the top seed, I think.
UConn?
They're playing. Florida Atlantic's playing San Diego State.
Yeah. Oh, they are?
Yeah.
We'll see.
And then it's Miami and UConn. UConn is who I would have picked or who I'd pick out of these four, but who knows? I'm not a huge basketball
guy. There's really no top seed in there. UConn is the highest.
They're all kind of middle of the UConn's four seed. They're the lowest or the highest ranked out of the finals. The final,
and no one expecting anything from them either. So, I mean, this is really a flip of the coin. San Diego State, I watched that game yesterday, yesterday, and they look pretty good. Miami also looked pretty good, but I mean, any of these teams, you never expected any of these teams to be in this position.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we shall see.
They call it March Madness.
Yeah,
never know.
On the NFL side, I'm curious to see how. Like, obviously, we're into like it's the beginning of the new season officially, right? So there's moves being made. Players are getting signed by new teams. Lamar Jackson still doesn't have a team to call his home yet. I did see though that because there was the whole controversy about. He had some guy that was not actually a licensed sports agent trying to like make deals for him. And then the NFL had to put a statement out like no one can make deals with Lamar Jackson except for no one can make deals through this so-called agent of Lamar Jackson. You have to go right through Lamar Jackson. So you don't think he'll end up anywhere, Desmond? That's what you were saying beforehand.
No, I think he's going to end up right where he's at now, back in Baltimore.
You think so? Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, if he can't get a deal done, I don't think he's going to hold out. I just don't see him, like how he handled it the last 2 years. I don't see him holding out. I see him going back in, playing, and then trying it again next year.
Okay. I gotcha.
Is a lot of this related to the fact that he's representing himself, do you think, Desmond? Because a lot of what I heard was related to the fact that he wasn't.
I think it was this morning that he was the one that was asking for trade. He was the one that was asking for a trade because he said that the Ravens are not interested in his. I'm guessing his talent at the price. I don't know. Basically, he was the one that wants to trade based on what he's getting now versus what he thinks he deserves. So.
And this is not new. You've seen other guys, and I think it was a couple quarterbacks that they negotiated on their own behalf. So this is not new. So if it's something that people are saying he's in this position because of not having an agent, maybe there's something else going on behind the curtain with him and the team that they may not.
Aaron Rodgers last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was. So interesting. Who's your? Ben and I talk football throughout the season, and it's not obviously the season right now. But you have any insights on the 2023 upcoming season here? Who's your front runners for the teams?
Well, the only two teams that I really watch are the Bears and the Bucks. I grew up in Lakeland, Florida, so I watch Tampa all the time, and of course, I played 8 years in Chicago, so my heart is still there. But outside of that, I really don't know that much about the NFL. But those two teams. I think Chicago Bears they'll be much well. You can't be worse than 3-13, so 3-14. So they got to go up from here. But no, my front runner for next year. How can you go against KC? How can you go against your team, the Buffalo Bills? But my dark horse, and I hate to say this, is the Detroit Lions.
Okay. All right. Could see that. I wonder who they're playing Thanksgiving this year. Obviously the schedule's not out yet, but they're always a good one to watch. Buffalo had a victory over them this past year, but Detroit, what's giving you the inkling on that?
Well, it was just this year they started off 1-6, and I kept telling everybody that they losing these games by small margins. If they win a couple of those games and get that taste of winning in their mouth, they were going to be a good team. And then they went on a 5, 6, 7 game win streak. And I believe that's going to carry over to next year because they play hard and they're not the old Lions anymore. They got something else different with them. So I believe they're going to take this momentum that they ended off the season with into next year. I think they'll actually win the NFC North.
Okay. I can see that because I think who else is there? You got Minnesota was really who led the pack this year in that division. So.
Yeah, 13-3, 13-4, or whatever. But you know how they won. Well, you know how they beat you guys. They won a lot of games like that.
Well, I mean, Justin Jefferson's disgustingly good, but also I think Buffalo threw that game away by somehow fumbling in their own end zone when they're trying to kneel it. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
Sorry to make you relive that.
Yeah, I know. It is what it is. You know, Buffalo sports fans always have those painfully stinging memories of certain events, whether it's the Ford Lateral, aka the Music City Miracle back in '99, Kansas City, a couple of different times with Pat Mahomes, 13 seconds. It just, we got to be better.
But it is 4 in a row Super Bowl losses.
4 in a row. Don't have to bring that one up. So, yeah. But anyway, we got a new stadium coming in the next 4 years or so. That would be exciting. Well, Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends at DAT. Then we'll continue the sports and / freight broker and talk here with Desmond.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the industry, and you'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Check out the show notes for a free month of DAT1 or any of their other load board products.
Absolutely. So getting back into it here, Desmond, for those out there that aren't familiar with you or your story, just kind of take us back to, you in a previous life and kind of how you got into the freight brokering world, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so most people know me from my days in the NFL when I played 12 years in the NFL, 3 years with the Denver Broncos in 1999, getting drafted in the 6th round out there after they won 2 world championships, and then going on to Miami, playing a year in Miami, and then finishing up my career 8 years with the Chicago Bears. Had the wonderful experience of playing in the Super Bowl, although we did not win the Super Bowl. But just playing in my hometown, not hometown, but in my home state was definitely an amazing accomplishment. And then 12 years later, after playing in the Super Bowl, no, it wasn't 12 years. How many years after playing in the Super Bowl? I'm getting old, fellas. 15 years after playing in the Super Bowl, I ended up starting Bear Down Logistics after being introduced to it by a friend of mine in the industry who wanted me to really do some marketing collaborations with him. But I seen another opportunity because he's a drayage guy. And after learning about the other modes of transportation within this industry, the light bulb came on, and I went back and gave him a proposal. Hey, how about I start up a logistics company and I do the flatbeds, the dry vans, the reefers, and everything else that you're not doing. And when you get opportunity over here on what you're doing, you send it my way, and I'll do the same thing, vice versa with you. And that's how Bear Down Logistics was born after my friend Brian introduced me to this industry.
Did you know what a freight broker was like 20 years ago, or was it like a light bulb moment trying to figure it out? Ben and I joked about it. I never knew what brokering was until I got into it, and I still didn't understand it for like the first 3 months.
No clue at all. And here's the thing. I know Von Moore from AIT. He was a guy that I met about 12 years ago. He took me into his office. I'm like, oh, man, his office is really, really sweet. Like, what do you really do? He told me about logistics way back then. And it wasn't until 2 months ago when I kicked myself. I was like, hold on, I know one of the biggest company owners in the freight forwarding industry, and I haven't talked to this guy yet. So I was introduced to it, but I had no clue of what freight brokering actually meant. But I'm glad that I was introduced to it because I feel like this is home for me now, and the industry is great.
Nice. And so when you first got into it, so obviously you knew somebody that was on the drayage side of it, but what were some of the other outlets that you use to try and learn and absorb knowledge? Because that's like one of the biggest questions we get. I mean, obviously people can listen to our show and our content and whatnot, but people are always asking us like, where do I start? Like, should I be taking a course, or do I need to go work for somebody, or, fill in the blank, right? But kind of what was your approach to trying to take it all in and just start chipping away at it?
Well, after being introduced to it and thinking, hey, I think I want to, start a company in this industry, I always told my kids, if you want to learn something in today's world, you can master something within 6 months because you got Google and you got YouTube.
Yep.
And so I went straight to Google. I went straight to YouTube. And one of those shows that I would watch all the time is all of the podcasts that you guys put out there. I probably literally watch, and you guys have those smaller 5 to 15 minute videos.
Yep.
I actually use those videos to train my new associates now when they come in, because those are the things that I use to train myself. You guys and about 4 or 5 other guys that when I listened to them, they just sounded like, okay, they know the game. I'm gonna listen to them. And along with Brian Rice with Dre Depot, that was my college university for the logistics business. And here I am now, loving every minute of it, and still got a lot to learn, but still looking at a ton of YouTube videos and listening to podcasts all the time.
Nice.
I'm curious, what are some of the parallels you've seen between your past career and your present career? What are some of the attributes that you learned and applied with an extremely long NFL career into this industry, right?
Right. So hopefully I have an extremely long career over here also. But the one thing is, it's never easy. It's never easy, and you're going to get your butt kicked, and you're going to have to call audibles. You're going to have to adjust. I came in this industry at one of the tougher periods of the industry, not knowing that it was a tough period until.
Do you want to share that, by the way? Because I think when you started, and even just whatever you're willing to share is very impressive for that very reason, because we hear a lot of people say that it's not possible. It's too hard. You can't go get customers. Now isn't the time. Well, I mean, you want to refute that?
Yeah, I do want to refute it. But here's the thing, Ben. I didn't care. It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't focused on that. And so I started my company October of 2021. And then that was just on paper. I got my MC May 2022. So that's when I started operations. And as we know, May 2022 is when everything just hit almost right around that time. I had no clue. All I was focused on was I got to make these calls. I got to try to get some business in here. I wasn't worried about the outside world, and I still try not to worry about the outside world. But as I become more educated about the outside world, you pay attention. You have to pay attention to it a little bit. But I'm so focused on what's going on inside these walls here that's why I think I was able to, for the first 3 months, do it all myself. And then in August of 2022, I hired my first 2 employees. And from August to the end of October is when I finally cracked that 6-figure revenue of $100,000 in 2.5 months of hiring my first 2 people. And off we went. But it was just, hey, here's the process. I was told I got to make this amount of calls. I was told I got to reach out to this amount of people. I was told this is the language that I got to speak. A lot of that language came from you guys. This is what I have to say if I want to have customers. I got to have some type of good selling points or whatever it may be. And I wrote all that stuff down, and I got on the phone, and I just did what I was told to do, and I didn't worry about anything else. Mm-hmm. Now, was it easy? Hell no, it wasn't easy. Was it frustrating? Was it one of those things like, dang, man, am I ever going to get past these 2 customers? Man, the guy said he was going to send some freight. It's been a month. Is he really going to send some freight? Like, did they just lie to me? I mean, all of that stuff. But you just keep going, and you just keep going. And then the dam broke at some point. And that's what I think a lot of people got to understand is that it's not going to happen like overnight. All the activity that you're doing in month 1, 2, and 3 is not going to catch up until months 4, 5, 6.
We say that so much too. Yeah, you're planting seeds that take so much time to harvest. It's so true.
Absolutely.
It's way more like farming than it is hunting. Have you guys ever seen, there's a motivational video we used to send around in sales. This is probably like 15 years ago. I think it's from a movie, but it's a football motivational video where this guy's doing a bear crawl. The team is, and they all start on the goal line, and the coach goes, can you make it 10 or 15 yards? And they all make it 10, 15 yards. And then they blindfold the one guy, have the bigger guy get on his back, and the whole team is just like, you can go one more yard. You can go one more yard, right? And, the whole team only goes 10, 15 yards. But when they blindfold the guy and everybody's there helping him, like pushing him to just keep doing the things that he knows he needs to do, like he makes it literally the whole way across the field, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it really just exemplifies, I think, literally what you're saying, right? It's like when you focus on all the reasons why you can't, there's always a reason. If you want to find 10 reasons why it's going to be hard or difficult to build anything, there's no shortage of excuses, right? But if you know the things you need to do and you literally put your head down and do them consistently for a long enough period, Nate and I talk about this a lot. Like, I've literally never seen anybody not succeed in this industry that did those things, right? That did the things they needed to do, did them consistently, and did them with ethics, right? Did them ethically over a long enough time. You will build the relationships and you will have a successful business, right?
The other thing I'll add in there,
why you can't.
Yeah, the thing I'll add there too, and for anyone listening who's new into this industry, like open your ears right now and take notes. So one of the things, Desmond, that you mentioned that you did was you got started. You stuck to the quote unquote script of what was prescribed, make X amount of calls to X amount of people and follow up and keep doing it, rinse and repeat over and over. So many people, they get stuck in this whole mentality of, well, I'm going to spend my first month just getting the best leads that I can, learning everything I can about them, making sure my home office is perfect and that I have the greatest LLC name and that, I've got the best computer set up and software. And it's like,
what about a fancy website, Nate?
Yeah, a great fancy website and business cards. It's like, no, start making calls. When you start taking action like that, then you'll truly know what your needs are. You might find out that you don't know enough about X, Y, and Z part of the business, and you've got to go learn that. And like you said, Desmond, we've got Google and YouTube as your best friend to help fill in a lot of those knowledge gaps. And obviously our content and a lot of the other folks out there that have similar types of shows and content, the information's out there. You have to go identify what you need to learn and go learn it. And then in addition to all of that, it's just continuous repetition of doing over and over and over, making these calls. You're going to learn that you suck at cold calling in the beginning. Yes. You don't even know, like you sound awkward hearing yourself talk to somebody on the phone. And it's very, very, it's stressful and it's very uncomfortable. But then you get into a rhythm where you just find your voice and it's super easy and fluid to have a conversation with the most random person in the world. But you'll never get to that point until you take action and start actually doing these things. So Nate, that's my advice to people out there. Start.
You know what I was scared of? Somebody asking me the hard question. Mm-hmm. I was terrified. Man, what if they ask this? Or what if they ask, I don't know about this and I don't know about that. But I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm a good speaker. I do motivational speaking, and I figure, hey, if I don't know something, I can intelligently say that I don't know it without sounding dumb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
and I was going to say, that's it right there. I remember my first job. I worked for a bank, and I had a guy take me under his wing, like mentor. Guy was like 60, and he said, Ben, he's like, you're going to go into a lot of meetings where people are going to expect you to know things. And I'm like right out of college, right? So like, I don't know what I don't know. And he's like, you are going to be put in this position. And he's like, I'm going to give you the way to get out of it all the time. You just go, that's a great question. Look down, write it down, and go, hey, I'm pretty sure I think I know what you're asking, but I don't want to lead you down the wrong path. Let me get clarification and get back to you. He goes, nobody ever has gotten angry at the person that said they want to make sure they get them the right answer. And he's like, it'll get you out of that situation. And that just alone, like to your point, helps at least with the nerves, right? Because again, nobody knows all the answers to all these questions, no matter how long you've done it. And even when you have and you think you do, you don't. And life's going to prove that you don't ever know anything, right? But it's the confidence, like you said, to be able to deliver that and go, hey, look, if I don't know it, I don't know it, but I will get you the anscer. Give me some time and I'll get back to you. Right?
And that's a way better response than trying to BS your way through it. That's something that we always were told in the military. Like if you're briefing somebody that's, been in the service way longer than you and they know a lot more and they ask you a question that you don't have an answer to, don't just say, I don't know, and don't BS your way to try and sound like you have an answer. Exactly what you said, Ben, is what we were always trained is, that's a great question. I don't have the information right now. I will get it for you and I'll get back to you, tomorrow or later today. Right. And it is 100% okay, in my opinion. And I think it's the right thing to do, even on a sales call, to let that person know that that's not something I'm 100% positive on. I'll find out and I'll get back to you. Right. Because that shows that you're a resource.
Yes, it also conveys honesty, right? not only are you human and you don't know everything that nobody does, but it shows you have the humility to admit it when you don't, and the tenacity to go, hey, I'll get it for you and I'll get back, and then do that thing, right? Get the answer and then get back to them, right? And that differentiates you from half the people they're talking to right out of the gate, right?
And Ben, oddly enough, it conveys confidence also. Like
Yes.
I would tell somebody, you know what?
Yep.
Yeah, that's something that I've never been asked before. This is the first time this
Mm-hmm.
question has come up. I was like, I got some people that I could lean on and get an answer for you. So let me call my partners over at Dre Depot. I used to throw that out all the time. Let me
Yeah.
call my partners over at Dre Depot, and they'll probably have a good answer that I can come back to you with. But yeah, and I said just like that, nice and
Mm-hmm.
confident, and
Yep.
people were like, okay, just get back to me. One other thing, Ben, Nate, I think you said this because you was asking me what did I learn in the NFL that I had to bring over here. And Nate, you was talking about that those consistent repetitions, right? Man,
Yep.
when playing sports, you practice the same crap over and over and over and over again to it becomes a routine where you don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing here. Like
Yep.
you can't get good and just, a couple times of doing it. You have to continue to go through that script. You're gonna mess it up. You're gonna bumble over it a few times. But once you get it down, you don't need the script anymore. You already internalize it, and now you add your personality to it. And now,
Yes.
boom! Once you do that, now when people get on the phone with you, you're gonna sound so good, and people are gonna be attracted to that. But it takes time to get there, and you got to do those reps.
Did you use a script when you first started, or like maybe had
Oh,
a list of
absolutely,
questions or bullet points?
man. I used to have a script sitting right in front of me, and I used to literally like read it almost without sounding like I'm reading because I just didn't want to mess anything up. And I did that probably for my first 50, 75 calls where I just literally read it. And then, I got to the point where I didn't have to read it. I was still looking at it, but I could kind of freestyle a little bit. But now, it got to the point where I would just write the bullet points down and just fill in the blanks as I was talking.
Yep.
And I think that's the stuff that people, I mean, and again, because you have to put yourself in a position where you're vulnerable, right? To make a cold call in the first place. That's why it's not natural. That's why it's hard. That's why not a lot of people like doing it. It's also why it pays a lot of money, right? If it's difficult, not a lot of people do it, right? There's going to be more income potential. Even just saying, it reminds me of that, what's that famous Jordan quote? Like, I've missed 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 20 sometimes I've been trusted with the game winning shot and I've missed, right? But like, those are all the things that nobody thinks about when they think about the great things. Just like what you were saying, nobody thinks about the dumb calls I've made where I've sounded like an idiot, where I've hung up on myself, where I've stuttered or laughed or chuckled or whatever, right? Because the only thing that matters at the end of the day was like the conversation. What are your customers? What are the good relationships you've built, right? Who have you moved loads with? Like, what have you, like, nobody ever wants to hear or thinks about any of those things, but they're all required. You can't get to the I'm good at something unless you're willing to put yourself in a position to fail, make mistakes, and improve on it, no matter what it is you're doing. Like you said, riding a bike, playing sports, everything in life that we do that we're good at, we at one point weren't. And we had to get from there to where we are now, right? Practice
Yeah.
is the only way to do it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. So let's kind of go back to your journey getting into freight brokerage. Was there any issues along the way that you stumbled upon that you're like, what am I supposed to do here? Whether that's hiring, firing, dealing with a crazy carrier or a customer that's being nuts, any of those things along the way that just kind of stuck out as a good story to tell for anyone that's new into the game here?
Yeah. So it was really trying to get carriers to work with me. That was like one of the biggest obstacles at the beginning because as you guys know, when you got that fresh MC and it says you've been in the business for 60 days, people's
Yep.
like, nah, we're not working with you. And I got to the point where I was getting freight, but I was having a hard time moving it because nobody wanted to work with me. And Brian just told me, hey, you got to fight through this stuff. And so what I did, I just started calling the factoring companies and saying, "Hey, one of your carriers wouldn't work with me because you guys wouldn't approve me or whatever. Why? Why is that so? I know I'm new, but if I never have a chance to work for you guys, then I'll never have a chance to prove myself. And all I'm looking for is an opportunity to prove myself. And having those conversations with OTR, with Apex, with all of these big boys that everybody use, TBS, everybody one by one said, all right, we'll let you move this one. And then if this goes well, then we'll extend you more credit. So I'm not even, my MC is not even a year old yet. And, that's kind of that cutoff point.
Yep.
But I can move freight with about 80% of the factoring companies out there right now. I think that was one of the biggest challenges. The other was hiring people. You hear about all this, the great resignation and all of that stuff that was going on. But when it was time to go out and hire people for, hey, that carrier rep position and that account management position, it took me literally 2 months to hire 2 really good people. And that was painful because I was ready to get going. And it just took time and it took patience. And the last thing that you want to do is want to just go out and hire any Joe Schmo, especially when you're first starting up. You about to hire some people that's at least a B on the A through F rating. And I think I hired 1 A and I hired 1 C. The C didn't stay around a little bit, but my A, he's still my right-hand guy right now, and he will continue to be my right-hand guy. He's the one who, whenever I hit that brick wall of, what does that mean? He would come in with his 8 years of experience and coach me through everything.
That's awesome.
Let me ask you. I want to ask you something about that, both, but the second one first. What were some of the characteristics you looked for when you were interviewing? Are they things that you thought about like implicitly, or is it kind of intangible? You kind of interviewed them, and if they were a good fit, like charismatically, like how did you go about the process?
So here's, and it may not line up with what, like for the industry, but the one thing that I said that I wanted people with a vision. I wanted someone with a vision. I wanted someone with a big vision because I had a big vision, and I didn't want somebody who had a small thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And the question that I ask everybody to this day is, what is your vision 1, 3, and 5 years from now? And how can Bear Down Logistics help you get there?
That's huge.
It's a great question to ask.
If you can't tell me how this position is going to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish in your life, then we're not a good fit. So, my man Miguel, we were sitting right out here in this office. And he came over for a second interview, and I asked him that question. He's like, "Do you want to know my real answer?" I was like, yeah, that's the only reason I'm asking you. And he said, okay. He was like, in 5 years, I don't even want you to be here every day. I want you to be somewhere with your family, and I'm running this place for you. And I was like, okay, good answer.
Yeah, great answer.
But I needed to have that vision first. And now, all the technical stuff, which I didn't know deeply the technical stuff that they needed. So I would always have my partner Brian on the phone with me to kind of ask some of those questions. But my thing was, first and foremost, I needed some people with big visions.
I think that's great.
So I want to head back to the first one you brought up was the, getting to work with factoring companies. And we see this in other parts of the industry too. It could be a brand new shipper with a broker who doesn't have any credit history or any presence in a credit database, and they get denied by broker after broker. It could be a carrier that's only had their authority for 30 days and gets told no by every broker. It could be a factoring company who tells as a broker, right? But I think what you did that's awesome is you didn't take that no as a set in stone period at the end of a sentence. You said, well, let me figure out why so I could turn that no into a yes. And I think that's the kind of problem solving and creative thinking that makes the good brokers stand apart from just the average mediocre broker. So like if I'll give you the carrier example, is if a carrier has like 30 days authority, you don't know what their history was before that. They could have been a a driver for 20 years for a larger company and decided to open up their own shop. Same thing
Right.
with you as a brokerage, right? Even if you've only had your authority 10 months, they don't know that you've got a guy working with you that's got 8 years under his belt that knows what he's doing, right? And if you don't have those conversations and talk to the factoring companies and figure out what is it that you need to see from me, or what can I do to prove my value to you? If you don't have those conversations, you're just leaving all those opportunities just left out to dry. You never even once take a chance at them. So I like that you did that. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They take no as no right away. The same way that when someone's on a sales call and they get an objection, they're like, okay, sounds good, bye. Right? Instead of actually digging more into it, because that's what this whole sales process is it's that song and dance of, well, they're telling me no, but it really means prove to me why I should say yes instead of just actually no. So glad to see that you persevered through the fun joys of the first 3 to 6 months there. And you're going to have a lot of fun ahead of you. And hopefully 5 years from now, you're not in the office every day and you're spending more time with the family. So I think you got the right vision and the right mind.
It's also the mindset too, right? Being able to hire like-minded people that don't see a bunch of closed doors. They instead see a bunch of doors that just haven't been opened yet, right? They're all closed when you start. They're closed because you didn't pick up the phone. They're closed because they don't know you. They're closed for 1,000 reasons, right? Everything's a no until you make it a yes, right? And almost any no can be turned into a yes in almost any scenario. If you have the right situation, the right circumstance, the right trust, you can turn any no into a yes, right? It's just how hard are you willing to push to get the yes, and is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Yep.
And you just got to be willing just to keep and you're gonna get no's. That's just part of it. This is part of it. You got to be willing to shrug that off and go on to the next thing. So where's the next opportunity? Okay, they don't want to give me an opportunity. Somebody's going to give me an opportunity. So let me keep searching and digging till I find that opportunity, because some people have legitimate reasons why they don't work with you. They have a broker that they already love. Well, great. Okay. Hopefully my next call, that customer learns to love me like you love your customer. Tell me why you love that broker so much like you do, because I need to understand why you're not willing to even have a conversation with me. Like, a lot of times I get to the point where it'll get so frustrating, right? You have nothing else to do but to have fun with it. I know I sent out a lot of emails, and I had this one guy. I sent out this one email, and it said, "Are we the best in the industry?" And I had a whole bunch of stuff in there, and he was like, "No, you're not the best in the industry. You can't even spell my name right." And I was having a terrible day. And you get all these low lists, and it's not me. The list spelled his name wrong, and so I went back and forth with the guy. I was like, well, I was never quite good in school in English or in my grammar, but in hustle, I scored A every time. And he would not respond to me, and I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. And he finally responded. He was like, "Okay, you win." And I was like, "Does that mean that I get the business?" He was like, "No, but I enjoyed your back and forth." And to me, for that day, that was just a win. I was like, "I'm gonna keep going." And I sent like 6 messages back and forth to him. Well, not even back and forth, just sent him 6 messages until he responded. And then once he responded, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'll leave you alone. Let's go back to work. But
absolutely. You got to make it fun. Like, I remember my buddy and I, we used to play games where it's like sometimes like you just having a down day, you're not closing anybody. I'm like, I just want to win an argument sometimes. And it's just like one of these instances like, I just need to prove to this person why and what. And again, like that's what keeps the energy up. That's what makes it fun. It doesn't need to be like this arduous, boring job. Like you're digging a hole somewhere. Like you can make it fun. You can make it enjoyable, right?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And on those days when you having those just frustrating days, you gotta just turn it around and just do something quirky, just out of the blue, and just make it interesting.
Yep, I'll take your.
Well, we got some Q&A to get to here, but first I'm gonna give a shout out to our friends over at Lean. Are you looking to take your freight brokerage or agency to the next level? Look no further than Lean Solutions Group. They are industry leaders in nearshore staffing for logistics companies with offices located in South America, Mexico, and the Philippines. They offer a wide range of exciting positions, including freight broker back office operations, accounting, tech and web development, business development, marketing, customer service, and more. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best in the business. Visit their website at www.leangroup.com to learn more about the exciting solutions that they have to offer your brokerage or agency. All right, so our first question, and this kind of just is going to roll right through the conversation we were having. Someone asked, what got you guys into brokering and what made you decide to stay in the industry? So, Desmond, we kind of figured what we heard your story of how you got in the industry. What's made you decide to stay? I mean, you're about a year into it now, and that's by this point we see a lot of fall off, right? That first year to 2 years is a lot of turnover. Typically, the first 6 months, people are just like, yeah, it's not really for me. I'm not going to make the calls or whatnot. But you're about a year into it. What's made you decide, like, yeah, I'm gonna bear down and with Bear Down Logistics and keep going full speed ahead here?
Well, first of all, I'm financially into this thing. Like, I funded this thing myself. So
there you go.
That's one thing. But no, it's as frustrating as it can be just as fun. Me and the guys, we have a good time. And this is an industry. And here's one of the reasons why I jumped into it and why I'll stay into it. It's not going anywhere. It's going to have ups and downs, but it's not going anywhere. It's not going out of style. It's not one of those industries that's here today and then 2 years from now, man, what happened to the tech bubble? Logistics is going to be here. So that's one of the reasons why I like this industry and one of the reasons why I decided to jump into it.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. So, I got into brokering. I worked for a trucking company before, so that's kind of how I got into it. I switched from more of the operations to the sales side, going to the 3PL world. But I think the reason I stay with it too is it is exciting to me and it's fun, even though there's like the headaches that come with it. But you're absolutely right; it's not going anywhere. It will definitely change, I think, the way that it looks and the way that we conduct business, as it has. Right? I mean, you go back 30 years ago, DAT and truck stop didn't exist. People were literally calling truck stops to figure out what truck drivers were there and had an available truck, right? People would fax over their load sheets, and that's all. It's completely changed the way that we do business. But the fact that we can conduct business still is the same today. It's just the way we do it is different. So that's why I've stuck with it. I think it's fun and interesting. Ben, I'm curious. Some people have probably heard your story, how you got into it, but give us the long and short of it, I guess.
Yeah, I got recruited into it. I was going to go work for a bank when I moved to Florida. I was in banking before, and I got recruited into it. And then when I went and researched, I was like, one, I had no idea that it existed. Two, I was just super fascinated at it's like everything I enjoy kind of all rolled into one. So you got the economics and the free market that you get to deal with. You have the relationships and the people side of the business. But also it changes every day. Like, it's always interesting and it's always fast moving. And I can't stand sitting still. So even just any desk job was always not that enjoyable. But in this, it's like a contact sport desk job, right? Where like there's just always energy. Sometimes it's not great. Sometimes it really is. But even on the bad days, it keeps it interesting. But also not only that, and just the enjoyment in it is that, like, it's also one of the last industries where a small business can be started by literally one person, and you can literally grow it to whatever your dream is. Like, that's your only limitation. Like, as much as you want to hustle and as much as you want to build it, for as long as you want, you can continue to go in that direction until you don't want anymore. And in every other industry and in every other niche, the biggest players get the biggest slices of the pie. In ours, there is no economies of scale. So the bigger players don't even really have a big advantage over the smaller ones. Just like, Desmond, your company, Bear Down Logistics, is going to be able to compete with some of the biggest companies in different ways, but in a way that fits you guys. And if you want to grow that big, there's no reason why you can't. And I haven't seen any other industry where hard work and hustle almost guarantees success. There are a lot of other industries where you can work really hard and still fail. This is one of the few ones where I think if you do it over a long enough period, again, I don't want to say you can't fail, but it is a very high success rate if you stick with it for long enough.
Yeah,
it is interesting, like you said, Ben, how a small business owner can compete with the biggest companies out there. There's no, like, you're not overshadowed by it.
I got C.H. Robinson right next to me, and they're the biggest of the big.
That's proof right there. That's exactly it. So Good stuff. All right, our next question. When it comes to LTL, what is a standard pallet? My customers aren't giving me full dimensions. 48 by 40 inches is a standard pallet size. Have you guys, I mean, I've seen 48 by 48 as well, but those tend to be the standard ones if a customer's not giving you that. But I guess my advice to anybody would be is if you don't know, just ask your customer what their pallet dimensions are. There's nothing wrong with, asking that question.
Come around here. So I didn't know that at first, and I was telling you guys about my right hand man. He's been trying to sneak in. Guys? He's been trying to sneak in here because you get some of your customers that got last minute things that they don't tell you about, and then your carrier is at the place, and now it's like, oh, there's $1,000 lumper fee.
Yeah,
it's great that we know that. So he was sneaking in here trying to tell me about all of this, but. That's my guy Lewis right there who taught me all about those.
Good to meet you, man. I like it.
And all that good stuff.
Likewise, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, yeah. So the takeaway there is, if you don't know, just ask your customer. Because I mean, the same thing goes with like any. It could be how a certain commodity has to be secured on a truck, right? Like Ben, you did a lot of work with steel, right? And some people need certain kinds of tarps versus straps versus.
And they change
and whatnot, right? Chains, you name it.
Well, and I was going to say they always change too. You could have the same customer shipping the same commodity, and you could have 3 different loading requirements in a week because there's something a little bit different. Coils are like that too. Some are loaded at the same facility. You could think you're doing the same thing because it just says coils, but the gauge is different. The way they're loaded are different. So when in doubt, always ask the shipper. Always, right? And then make sure you're just relaying whatever the shipper's saying directly to your carrier, right? Just keep it simple.
Yep, absolutely. All right, last question. I'm assuming this comes from a carrier. He said, why do brokers wait weeks to pay a carrier? I mean, it's kind of standard payment terms in our industry. It's 30 days on both ends. So you expect a customer to pay you in 30, and a carrier can expect to be paid by you in about 30, and those numbers can vary. But that's, there's a lot of services where you get an invoice, you got 30 days to pay. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is.
If they don't want to wait that long, they have this thing called a factoring company.
Yep.
They can get paid like right away.
And furthermore, this is what pisses me off about carriers yelling that they want transparency and rates, because guess what? I've had customers that didn't pay until, like, honestly, on average, they were 60 to 70 days. And you know what? My carriers worked with me because we cash flowed that gap, right? Like, we're willing to wait 2-3 months. Like, I have invoices from some of my customers that are literally 4 months old because they're a huge company. It takes long to deal with. And that's the value that goes back to the carriers. Guess what? Work with me. You're going to get paid in 2-3 weeks. If you want paid sooner, I'll pay you sooner. The reason, and again, if some carrier's just looking at what I'm getting paid and you take that out of the context, okay, well, do you want to wait 3 months to get paid? No, I want to get paid in 2 weeks. Well, then don't tell me what I'm getting paid is too much or too little when you only have one piece of that information. And again, I don't know. I'm like, since we started the episode off on that article, it's like still in the back of my head that really bugs me because there's so much else that goes into that number other than what the number is, right? The time of when you get paid, how your customer is to deal with, all of these things, plus your expenses. Not to take that off a tangent, but.
Yeah, tell us how you really feel, Ben.
Ben versus the truck drivers in this corner.
Yeah.
The thing is, well, again, everybody wants to make it look as simple as possible. And the carriers, I think, and a lot of times are like, hey, when rates are low, that means the brokers are keeping more of the money. But at the end of the day, right, like the brokers aren't controlling it. The shippers aren't really controlling it. Like the market controls it. It's a free market that is going to move up and down based on what the need is at any given point. And to just look at $1 number and say, oh, this is going to fix all of it is asinine and doesn't have anything to do with the real problem to begin with, I think.
I remember a few years ago, somebody had asked me on, it was the early days of this podcast, had asked me if I could see one thing changed the following year in this industry, what would it be? And my whole thought was, if we could find a way for carriers and brokers to stop hating each other and stop bashing on each other, but instead finding a way to work harmoniously with one another, that would be the change I wanted to see. Unfortunately, 3 months later, the COVID pandemic happened, and that's what the change was that we saw in the industry. But it is what it is. You can't always get what you want. But I'm curious, Desmond,
that's my goal.
If asked the same question, what would you see changed?
is that like the carriers, like as the broker being in the middle. I feel like my job is to go out and ask my customer for a good fair rate and pay the carrier a good fair rate. And now all of us are happy with what we got paid, right? And now the customer is happy that the shipment got there on time. The carrier is happy that he got paid a fair rate. I'm happy because I made a spread and I got paid a good rate. That's just the only way that I know how to do business. And I think for the majority of small to middle-sized brokers, that's how they work. That's how they work. And of course, you're gonna have some jackasses here and there that try to gouge people, but 95% of the people that's in our position, that's just what they do.
That's exactly right. Well, good stuff. Desmond Clark, the man, the myth, the legend. Great to have you on the show. It sounds like you've been kind of on the podcasting circuit lately, and you've got your own show or a couple of shows. You want to share with anybody what the shows that you've got that they can tune into as well?
Absolutely. So we're going to kick off In the Huddle with Bear Down Logistics towards the end of April. That's going to be a show where we go out and we interview experts, leaders, and entrepreneurs within the industry. And then we also kicking off the truck stop next week, where we only talk to the truckers, the guys who, the backbone of our economy, the people who are driving those trucks. I got so much respect for them, and I think that they need to hear that more from the brokers. Like we got a whole lot of respect for what they do, but as I'm talking to those guys, they don't feel like they get respected. So those are my two podcasts, in the huddle, and then the truck stop starting off next week.
Gotcha. Good stuff. We'll definitely check them out. And then I think you're on LinkedIn as well, right? Folks can connect with you on there if they just look you up. Desmond Clark. Shoot him a request. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread in the freight brokering world. It's always good to see like new energy brought into this business. You get a lot of people that they've been in it for 20, 25 years, but to find someone that's taken a complete change in their career path, right? You went from professional sports to public speaking and now into the world of freight. So welcome to the industry, man. It's a pleasure to be able to do this with you.
I appreciate it.
Any last words for the audience?
One more plug? Yeah, can I get one more plug? Yeah, go and follow me at Bear Down Logistics on LinkedIn also.
Got it. Bear Down Logistics. Check it out. Ben, you got any Desmond, you got any sign-off quote that you like to go with? Me and Ben have our go-tos, but you kind of developed your own podcast sign-off yet?
No, I haven't, but I got so many freaking quotes. I'm a motivational speaker. So I'll tell you, every day I wear a shirt that says that. And that says win the day. And that's all we need to focus on right now is what we have control of today. Tomorrow's gone. We can't do anything about it. No, yesterday is gone.
Yesterday is gone. I got you.
We can't do anything about it. And tomorrow it'll get here when it get here. But let's focus on what we can control today and live life as it is, not as what you think it should be.
I like that. Ben, what do you got?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.
I'll be right.